You know that sick feeling when you walk into your garage after a long winter, turn the key on your bike, and all you get is a pathetic click? Or worse, it cranks but won't fire, and you smell that sweet varnish smell coming from your fuel system? That's the sound of money evaporating. That's a $3,000 carburetor rebuild or a fuel injection system that needs complete replacement because you followed some half-baked winterization advice from a forum. Here's what nobody tells you. Military and large government fleet vehicles sit in long-term storage facilities for years, sometimes a decade, in brutal heat, then get pulled out and fired up instantly. No drama, no rebuilds. Just turn the key and go. They are not using magic. They are using a specific protocol that locks down every system that can fail during storage. I am breaking down all 7 steps right here, so your bike starts perfectly, whether it sits for 6 months or 10 years. Secret 1, fuel system lockdown. The $3,000 mistake. The worst thing you can do to your bike is let modern ethanol fuel sit in the system. I'm not exaggerating when I say this single mistake destroys more stored motorcycles than everything else combined. Ethanol fuel can start degrading in as little as a few weeks. Within a couple of months, it is turning into a varnish that coats every surface inside your fuel system. That varnish does not just rinse out. It bonds to metal and clogs jets, destroys injector spray patterns, and corrodes fuel pumps from the inside. Military and fleet storage programs do not mess around with this. Their protocol is complete fuel system drainage or stabilization with commercial-grade additives, not the garbage you find at auto parts stores that claims to work up to 12 months. That is marketing nonsense. Here's what actually works. You have 2 options, and both require commitment. Option 1 is complete drainage. Drain the tank completely. Not just until it stops flowing, but actually tip the bike and get every drop out. Then run the engine until it dies from fuel starvation. But here is where most people stop and think they are done. They are not. There is still residual fuel in the carburetor bowls, in the fuel lines, and in the injector rails. That fuel will turn to varnish and destroy everything. You need to fog the cylinders with storage oil, which I will cover in the next section. For the fuel system, you also need to introduce a small amount of storage, specific fuel through the system after it is drained. Option 2 is stabilization with the right additive. Pri-g is widely used in military and industrial fleet storage because it actually works long-term. It is not sold at every corner store because it actually costs money to manufacture properly. This stuff does not just slow down fuel degradation. It stops it and reverses early varnish formation. Add it to a completely full tank. Full means zero airspace for moisture and oxidation. Then run the engine for 10 minutes to circulate the treated fuel through the entire system, carbs, injectors, fuel pump, everything. Then shut it down and do not touch it for years if you want. What happens if you skip this step? I watched a guy try to revive a bike that sat for 3 years with untreated fuel. The carburetor bodies were so corroded inside they could not be rebuilt. He needed a complete replacement set, $2,800 just for the parts. Fuel-injected bikes are not any better. Those injectors have tolerances measured in microns. Varnish clogs them permanently. You're looking at $200 to $400 per injector, and most bikes have 4. The math is brutal. Spend $30 on proper fuel stabilizer now, or spend $3,000 on a fuel system rebuild later. Military and fleet storage programs figured this out decades ago. Fuel system protection is not optional. It is the foundation of everything else. If you only do one thing on this list, do this. Every other storage step fails without fuel control. Secret 2. Internal engine preservation, fogging, and cylinder protection. Your fuel system is locked down, but your engine internals are still vulnerable to the thing that kills stored engines faster than anything else: rust. The problem is simple physics. When an engine sits, the oil film on cylinder walls, piston rings, and valve stems drains down into the crankcase. That leaves bare metal exposed to air and moisture. Even in a dry garage, there is enough humidity to start surface rust formation within weeks. Once rust forms on cylinder walls, you are done. Those pistons will score the cylinders on the first start, and you will need a complete rebuild. I have seen engines that looked perfect externally, but had rust-pitted cylinders that destroyed themselves within 5 minutes of running. For long-term storage, fogging oil is non-negotiable. Fogging oil is different from regular motor oil. It is designed to stick to metal surfaces and resist draining or evaporating. It creates a protective barrier that lasts for years. Here is the specific technique. Start the engine and let it warm up to operating temperature. Remove the air filter or intake tract so you have direct access to the throttle bodies or carburetor throats. With the engine running at a fast idle, spray fogging oil directly into the intake. You want to see white smoke coming out the exhaust. That is the fogging oil coating everything inside the combustion chamber and exhaust system. Keep spraying until the engine starts to stumble and die from the oil richness. Let it die. Do not restart it. Now remove the spark plugs and spray fogging oil directly into each cylinder through the plug holes. Give each cylinder a good 3-second blast, then manually rotate the engine by hand, either by the rear wheel and gear or by the crankshaft bolt, to distribute that oil across the cylinder walls. Reinstall the spark plugs, but do not reconnect the plug wires yet. You want to leave the ignition system disabled so nobody accidentally tries to start it during storage. What happens if you skip this step? Moisture gets into the cylinders through the intake valves or past the rings. It condenses on those bare metal cylinder walls. Rust forms. The rings seize in their grooves from corrosion. When you finally try to start that engine, those seized rings cannot seal properly. You get blow-by, oil consumption, and catastrophic wear. Or worse, the rust is so bad that the pistons physically seize in the bores on the first rotation. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm telling you what actually happens to unprotected engines during long-term storage. The military learned this lesson with millions of dollars in destroyed equipment. Fogging oil costs $12 a can and takes 20 minutes to apply properly. Secret 3. Battery isolation and parasitic draw elimination. Your engine is preserved, but your electrical system is quietly killing itself right now. The hidden assassin is parasitic draw. Even with the key off, your bike is pulling power. The clock, the ECU memory, the alarm system, the fuel pump controller. They are all drawing power around the clock. That constant drain kills batteries in 2 ways. First, it depletes the charge until the battery voltage drops below 12.4 volts. Once you are under that threshold, sulfation starts. Lead sulfate crystals form on the battery plates and harden. Those crystals are permanent. They reduce capacity and eventually make the battery completely useless. Second, a dead battery sitting in freezing temperatures will freeze solid and crack the case. A dead battery in hot temperatures accelerates the sulfation process and cooks the electrolyte. Military and fleet storage programs do not trust trickle chargers for long-term storage, and neither should you. Trickle chargers work great for short-term maintenance, but they cannot overcome deep discharge or reverse sulfation once it starts. And if the charger fails or loses power during a 6-month deployment, you come back to a dead battery anyway. The protocol is simple. Remove the battery completely. Do not just disconnect it. Take it out of the bike. Store it in a climate-controlled space, not the garage where temperature swings by 40 degrees between day and night. Keep it inside your house where it stays between 60 and 75 degrees year-round. Charge it to 100% before storage using a quality smart charger. Then check it every 3 months. If voltage drops below 12.6 volts, charge it back to full. This maintenance cycle keeps the battery in peak condition indefinitely. I have seen batteries stored this way for 5 years and still test at full capacity when reinstalled. What happens if you leave it connected? The parasitic draw kills it within 2 months. Sulfation sets in. Even if you charge it back up, you have permanently lost 20 to 30% of the capacity. Do that twice, and the battery is junk. A new battery costs $100 to $300 depending on your bike. 3 months of proper storage maintenance costs you 20 minutes of effort total. Military and fleet storage programs figured out this math a long time ago. This is where bikes quietly die without ever being touched. Secret 4. Tire and suspension. Protection, the weight problem. Your battery is safe, but your tires are about to become expensive paperweights. The problem is weight. Your bike weighs 400 to 600 pounds, and all of that weight is pressing down on 2 small contact patches where the tires touch the ground. When a tire sits in one position for months, the rubber deforms. The contact patch flattens permanently. This is called flat spotting, and it does not just make the ride uncomfortable, it makes the bike dangerous. Flat-spotted tires create vibration at speed. They reduce traction in corners because the contact patch shape is wrong, and they cannot be fixed. Once the rubber takes a permanent set, the tire is garbage. Military and fleet storage programs use complete suspension unloading. Get the weight off the tires entirely. If you have a center stand, use it. If you do not, you need paddock stands front and rear. Some riders go further and remove the wheels entirely, storing them separately. But here is what most people miss. Even with the bike on stands, you need to address tire pressure. Inflate the tires toward the upper end of their safe pressure range to help resist deformation. This extra pressure helps maintain the shape of the tire carcass during storage. Then, cover the tires completely to block ultraviolet light and ozone exposure. Even indirect sunlight through a garage window causes UV degradation. Ozone in the air attacks rubber and causes dry rot and cracking. Black plastic bags work. Purpose-made tire covers work better. The point is, zero light exposure. What happens if you skip proper tire support? I have seen bikes stored on the side stand for one winter come out with flat spots so bad the bike was unrideable. The owner had to replace both tires before the bike was safe. That cost $400 to $600 depending on tire choice. Worse, improperly stored bikes can develop seized suspension components. Fork seals dry out and leak. Shock shafts corrode from moisture. Brake rotors warp from uneven pressure. Military and fleet storage programs store vehicles for years and expect them to roll out ready for deployment. That only works if the tires and suspension are protected from day one. We are over halfway now, and this next part is where most properly stored bikes still get destroyed. Secret 5. Fluid management and corrosion prevention. Your tires are protected, but your fluids are quietly destroying your bike from the inside. Here's the thing that kills me. Riders think fresh oil before storage is the complete answer. They are half right, but they are missing the critical details that separate a bike that starts after 10 years from one that needs a complete teardown. Military and fleet storage protocol is complete fluid replacement before storage, but with specific additives and procedures that most riders never hear about. Start with engine oil. Old oil is not just dirty, it is acidic. Combustion byproducts create acids that eat bearings, cam lobes, and cylinder walls. During storage, those acids have months or years to work on metal surfaces with zero oil circulation to flush them away. Change the oil and filter right before storage. Here's the key. Run the engine for 10 minutes after the change to circulate fresh oil through every passage, then shut it down immediately. You want fresh, clean oil coating every internal surface. Military and fleet storage programs add corrosion inhibitors to storage oil. For motorcycles, the fogging oil procedure I covered earlier handles cylinder protection, But some riders go further and add a zinc additive to the crankcase oil for extra anti-wear protection during the first start after storage. Now, brake fluid. This is where most riders completely fail. Brake fluid is hygroscopic. It absorbs moisture from the air. Old brake fluid can contain 3 to 4% water by volume. During storage, that water corrodes brake calipers, master cylinders, and lines from the inside. You will not see the damage until you try to use the brakes and discover a spongy pedal or complete failure. I have seen calipers so corroded internally that the pistons seized solid. The rebuild cost more than new calipers. Flush and replace all brake fluid before storage. Use fresh fluid from a sealed container, not that bottle that has been sitting open in your garage for 2 years. Then there is coolant. Old coolant loses its corrosion. Inhibitors. Without those inhibitors, the mixture attacks aluminum radiators, water pump housings, and engine castings. The damage is insidious. You get pinhole leaks in radiators, corroded water pump seals, and blocked passages from corrosion debris. A complete cooling system failure from stored corrosion can cost $800 to $1,500 in parts alone. Flush and replace coolant with a fresh 50% to 50% mix before storage. The glycol itself does not degrade, but those corrosion inhibitors do, and they are what keeps your cooling system alive during years of sitting. What happens if you store with old fluids? The brake system corrodes and fails. The engine develops bearing damage from acidic oil. The cooling system eats itself from the inside. Military and fleet storage programs replace every fluid before long-term storage because the cost of fluids is nothing compared to the cost of corrosion damage. 3 quarts of oil, 1 pint of brake fluid, and 1 gallon of coolant cost maybe $60 total. The damage from skipping this step costs thousands. Fresh fluids do not just protect during storage. They decide whether the restart is smooth or destructive. Most stored bikes are not ruined by riding. They are ruined by chemistry. Secret 6. Climate control and vapor barrier systems. Your fluids are fresh, but environmental factors will still attack your bike unless you control one thing: moisture. Your garage is not good enough for extreme storage. I do not care if it is insulated or heated. The problem is temperature swings. When temperature drops at night, moisture in the air condenses on every metal surface. Chrome rusts, aluminum oxidizes, electrical connections corrode, fuel systems develop internal rust. This happens even in low humidity climates because the condensation cycle is driven by temperature change, not absolute humidity. Military and fleet storage programs use vapor barrier systems for vehicle storage, and you need to understand why. A vapor barrier bag is a heavy-duty plastic enclosure that seals the entire bike away from ambient air. Inside the bag, you place desiccant packs, silica gel packets that absorb moisture. The desiccant pulls moisture out of the air inside the sealed bag. Once that air is dry, there is no moisture available to condense on metal surfaces when temperature changes. No condensation means no rust. You can buy motorcycle-specific vapor barrier bags, or you can build your own system with heavy plastic sheeting and desiccant. The key is creating a seal and using enough desiccant to actually dry the air volume. Vapor barrier. Performance depends on that seal and the amount of desiccant used. Plan on 1 pound of desiccant per 27 cubic feet of airspace. A typical sport bike needs about 3 to 4 pounds. Check the desiccant periodically, especially early on, to make sure it is not saturated. When the indicator changes color, the desiccant is saturated and needs replacement or recharging. The alternative is climate-controlled storage. A storage unit with HVAC that maintains constant temperature between 50 and 70 degrees eliminates the condensation cycle. No temperature swings means no moisture problems. But climate control costs money, $100 to $200 per month in most areas. A vapor barrier system is a one-time cost of maybe $150 for the bag and the initial desiccant supply. Climate control works, but it is ongoing expense. Here is what does not work. tarps, and regular covers. They trap moisture against the bike and actually make condensation worse. I have seen chrome completely rusted under a tarp after one winter. What happens without proper climate control or vapor barriers? Every metal surface develops surface rust. Chrome pits. Aluminum oxidizes and turns white. Electrical connections corrode and create starting problems or total failures. Military and fleet storage programs store equipment in deserts and Arctic conditions using vapor barriers because they work regardless of external environment. Your bike deserves the same protection. Miss this step and everything you have done so far slowly unravels. Secret 7. Documentation, inventory, and restart protocol. Your environment is controlled, but one final step separates professional storage from amateur guesswork. That step is documentation. Military and fleet storage programs log every single storage procedure because memory fails and people change. You need a written record of what you did, when you did it, and what needs to happen before that first start. Create a storage checklist and tape it to the bike. Document the date you stored it, the date you changed each fluid, when you added fuel stabilizer, when you fogged the engine, and when you last charged the battery. Take photos. Document the bike's condition before storage. This protects you if something gets damaged or stolen during the storage period, and it gives you a baseline to compare against when you bring it back. But here's the critical part most riders completely miss: the restart protocol. You cannot just reinstall the battery, turn the key, and fire it up. That is how you destroy everything you just preserved. The restart sequence matters. First, reinstall the battery and verify voltage. It should read 12.6 volts or higher. If it is below that, charge it before proceeding. Check all fluids visually. Look for leaks, separation, or contamination. If anything looks wrong, deal with it before starting. Manually rotate the engine by hand. Put the bike in gear and roll it, or turn the crankshaft bolt with a wrench. You are verifying that nothing is seized, and you are distributing the fogging oil you sprayed in the cylinders. Reconnect the spark plugs. Prime the fuel system. On carbureted bikes, use the petcock and let fuel fill the bowls. On fuel-injected bikes, turn the key to run the system without starting the engine and let the fuel pump cycle 3 or 4 times. Skip these steps and you undo months or years of proper storage in seconds. Now you can start it. Do not rev it. Let it idle and warm up slowly. Watch for leaks, listen for abnormal sounds, and verify oil pressure immediately. What happens without a protocol? Riders forget critical steps. They dry start engines without oil distribution. They try to run bikes with empty fuel systems and burn up pumps. They skip fluid checks and discover leaks only after damage occurs. Military and fleet storage programs bring vehicles out of decade-long storage and expect them to deploy immediately. That only works because every step is documented and every restart follows the exact same protocol. Most riders skip these steps and pay thousands in repairs or lose the bike completely. Military and fleet storage programs prove this protocol works for decades in conditions worse than your garage will ever see. Which one of these did you skip, and what did it cost you? Drop your worst storage horror story below. Hit subscribe so we can keep building a smarter riding community together.